Hello, my name is Brant Hunt. Today is the second day of January 2023, and I'm going to be talking to you about something very important. A book that that I've been reading that has enormous impact upon us today. And my YouTube channel is Discerning What is True, and I hope you're doing well today. And so let's continue with the chapters to 27 tonight. We'll see how far we go. This book is 285 pages, and what I am on right now is 175 pages. So here we go. Chapter 27, the Tavistock formula got the U.S. into World War II. Perhaps the most important aspect of their training was how to use public polls to make public policy complying with what Tavistock goals said were desirable. This mind-altering technique is called opinion polling. The maladaptive responses made possible by Tavistock wholesale profiling, in which maladaptive responses, that is Tavistock Invisible Army, worked to perfection in the Gulf War. Instead of rebelling against dragging the nation to a war against a friendly country with whom we had no quarrel, a war that was waged without a proper congressional delegation of work. The delegation of war. We were turned in its favor. In short, we were badly misled without knowing it due to the long-range interdirectional conditioning the American people have been undergoing since 1946. Tavistock advised President Bush the Elder to use the following simple formula, which Reese and Lewin instructed Allen Dulles to use back in 1941. Roosevelt preparing to drag America into the Second World War. Number one, what is the state of the morale and probable course in the target country? This also applies to morale in the U.S. What is the state of susceptibility in the U.S. to the idea that war in the Persian Gulf is necessary? Number three, what techniques could be used to weaken opposition in the U.S. to war in the Persian Gulf? Four, what kind of techniques in psychological warfare would succeed in undermining the morale of the Iraqi people? It was here that Tavistock slipped up very badly. Once Bush committed himself to Prime Minister Thatcher's 1991 Gulf War in behalf of Queen Elizabeth and her BP oil company, you see, it's all about taking. It's all about taking from other countries. You see, wanting more and more and more. Tavistock put together a team which included psychologists, public opinion makers, led by the brazen liars at Hill and Nolan, and a host of Tavistock profilers. Every single one of the speeches made by President Bush with the intention of promoting war against Iraq was crafted by multidisciplinary teams of writers trained by Tavistock. Top secret information on how the Gulf War was propagated and how the American people were swung behind that nasty, corrupt war by President George Bush was given to a congressional committee recently. The report said that at an early stage of the plan to take out Iraq, the Bush administration was advised that public support was paramount and that he did not have the American people behind him. Rule one was to establish in the minds of the American people the great need to protect Saudi oil fields threatened by Iraqi invasion under the leadership of a man. Thus, although it was known from the beginning that Iraq had no designs on Saudi oil fields, the National Security Agency gave out false and misleading information to the effect that Saudi oil fields were the ultimate target of Iraq. This was a total fabrication, but it was the key to success. The NSA had never been punished for its lying conduct. The report stated that an unprecedented amount of television coverage would be needed to swing public support behind the war. The Bush administration early on secured the full cooperation of these three major networks, ABC, CBS, and NBC, and later CNN. In later years, a virtual propaganda station, that is Fox News, was added. The amount of Gulf War and related subjects covered in 1990 by these stations was 3 times that of any subject covered in 1989. Once the war began, coverage was 5 times greater than any other story, including the Tiananmen Square. Yes, interesting. Yes, in China. In 2003, Bush the Younger followed very closely the formula that had succeeded for his father, but with some additional adaptations. News mixed with fiction, see this section against about H.G. Wells' War of Worlds, became more fiction mixed with news, and blatant lying was resorted to so that straight reporting became impossible to distinguish from news mixed with fiction. One of the principal players in the coverage of the war was CNN News, which contracted with the Bush administration to bring the Gulf War to American sitting rooms on a round-the-clock basis. As a result of the massive favorable slant in news, deployment of troops to the Gulf was favorably received by about 90% of the American people. It was just another way to practice opinion-making pollings on the American people, just another way to brainwash them. The NSA advisors told the Bush administration that from the very start, the public had to be persuaded to go along with the Gulf War plans. It was decided to create a parallel between Hitler and Saddam, saying with the words Saddam Hussein must be stopped, repeated over and over again, followed by a lie that the Iraqi president is acting like Hitler. Yeah, this is all the conditioning because people see Hitler as a very bad person. But they never really ever talk about Stalin. They never talk about what he does, do they? They never talk about how many people he killed within his own country, much less other countries. That is, in the war, that is World War II. Later, a dire threat was added that Iraq had the capability to strike at the U.S. with long-range weapons of mass destruction. It was the adaptation of Stalin's edict that to capture and enslave your own people first terrorize them. Wow. British Prime Minister Blair went even further. Speaking in Parliament, he told the British people that Saddam Hussein had the capability to strike Britain and could do so within 45 minutes. He went as far as to warn British tourism vacationing in Cyprus to return to Britain as soon as possible, as British intelligence had learned that Iraq was preparing to launch a nuclear strike against the island. Blair made his announcement in the full knowledge that Iraq nuclear weapons program had been completely destroyed in 1991. The first Bush administration that is skilled communicating the need for a war in the Gulf reached its height with the Hill and Nolan fabricated incubator story, tearfully told by the daughter of the ambassador of Kuwait to Washington. The Senate and the entire country swallowed this massive fraud. Well, probably the Senate was already on it, if you know what I mean. It was Kaiser Wilhelm II cutting off the arms of young Belgian children all over again, with even greater success. After the Hill and Nolan big lie, 77% of Americans surveyed said they approve of using U.S. troops against Iraq, even though 65% of those polled didn't know. Oh man, this is unbelievable. The 65% of those people that were polled did not know where Iraq was on the map. Oh God, how stupid are we? All major polls found that the British sidestepping of the Constitution was approved because those polled had no idea what a constitutional declaration of war was, nor that it was mandatory. The role played by the UN added to the communication skills of the Bush administration, the report said. The second Bush administration, using the same Tavistock method, and once again, the American people went along with the lies, distortion presented to them as fact. The war was vigorously promoted by Vice President Cheney, who led a massive campaign to force public opinion onto the side of George Bush. No other vice president in the history of the United States has ever taken such an active part in forcing the American people into a war with Iraq. Cheney appeared on television 15 times in 1 month and adamantly declared that Taliban was behind the attack on the World Trade Centers, Trade Towers, that is, in New York, and that the Taliban was under the control of President Hussein. The fight against terrorism had to be taken to the terrorists in Iraq, Cheney said, before they could strike at the U.S. again. Cheney continued in the same vein long after his claim was proven absolutely false, although the world's greatest authorities came forward to announce that Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11, and that there was no Taliban fighters in Iraq. Cheney kept up his drumbeat of lies until Hans Blitz, the former UN chief weapons inspector, cut him off. And the CIA reported to the U.S. Senate that no connection had been discovered between Iraq and the Taliban and with 9/11. In fact, said the CIA report, Hussein hated the Taliban and had driven them out of Iraq many years before. We publish this information in the hope that American people will not be so gullible the next time their president wants to get them involved in a war. We would also like the American people to know that they are being grossly misled by a foreign think tank that constantly misleads them on multitudes of issues. Let us examine some of the issues and let us hope that the American people will never be misled again by the skilled communications. The American people have been grossly misled about 5 major wars, and that should be enough from any nation. But unfortunately, nonstop bombing of Iraq, Serbia by U.S. British aircraft showed that the American people had learned nothing from the Gulf War and how it was instigated, and how they were lied to and manipulated in an ultra reprehensive manner. The Second Gulf War was amply proof that Tavistock methods still work, so much so that the blatant lying was resorted to with the knowledge that even if discovered as lies, the Bush administration knew that their lies would just be shrugged off because the American people were now thoroughly conditioned in a state of permanent shell shock to display no concern over what was a very serious position for any nation to find itself in. What can be done about the grip the Tavistock has and its many affiliate institutions here in America, that is the Christian right, the Congress, our intelligence agency, and the State Department, a grip that extends all the way to the president and our top military brass? As I previously stated, the main problem is to be able to convince the broad mass of Americans that what is happening to them and the country is not a case of changing time due to circumstances beyond their control, but a carefully contrived plot, a real menace to the future of all of us, and not just some conspiracy theory. We can arouse the nation, but only if its concerned effort is made at the grassroots level. The solution to the problem lies in educating Americans and by unified action. There is a great and compelling need to educate the millions of people as to what the secret manipulators are doing, and more importantly, just how and why they're doing it. Urgent constitutional act is needed to bring this about. There are many leading citizens who have the power and the financial means to start a grassroots campaign. What is not wanted is a third political party. A grassroots movement grassroots movement properly educated and acting in concern is the only way, at least in my opinion, that we are going to win our country back from the dark and evil forces that have it by their throat. Together, in the grassroots movement, we can shake America free from the grip of foreign powers like Tavistock Institute serve so well, and foreign powers that are bent upon the destruction of America as constituted by our founding fathers. This work on the Tavistock Institute is another first in my series on major organizations whose names will be new to most readers. Tavistock is the most important nerve center in the U.S. and has poisoned and gradually altered for the worse every facade of our lives since 1946, when it began its North American operations. Tavistock has played and is playing a leading role in shaping U.S. policies and world events. It is undoubtedly the mother of all mind control and mind conditioning centers in the world. In the United States, it has a great deal of control over day-to-day affairs and has a direct hand in the course and direction of such American think tanks as Stanford Research, Esalen Institute, that's spelled Esalen, which I posted today about, which is another group that's pretty much what I call the New Age movement, the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania, MIT, the Hudson Institute, the Heritage Foundation, the Georgetown University, and even more directly extend its influence to the White House and the State Department. Tavistock has a profound influence in shaping U.S. domestic and foreign policy. Tavistock is a study center devoted to the service of the Black nobility and those devoted to promoting the New World Order inside a one world government. Tavistock does work for the Club of Rome, the CFR, the Trilateral Commission, the German Marshall Fund. I think that's supposed to be General Marshall Fund. The Mon Pelerin Society, the DITCHLEY, that is DITCHLEY group, the Qatar Colonial Freemason Control Lodge, and the Bank of International Settlements. Okay, that's my conclusion tonight with that particular chapter, chapter 7. I won't do too much more on that tonight. It's approximately 15 minutes. Again, trying to share this information to you in a way to help you to understand what Tavistock is all about. Thank you for listening and wish you a good night.